Good evening, or good morning if you're far enough into the night to have stopped telling the difference. Before I tell you whose night this is, do something for me. Picture a lake. Early. First light. No wind. The water gone to glass. The kind of flat that only happens out in country with nobody left in it. And you walk down to the edge the way you have your whole life, anywhere there's still water. And you look down. And there you are. Your own face, looking back up at you out of the water. Except this morning, your face in the water is looking at the shore. And you are looking at the water. That happened. Not in a story, to a woman I trust further than I trust most things that reach me on paper. It happened at first light, on a lake maybe 40 minutes drive from this chair, and it happened to her own face in her own water, and she set it down the way you'd set down a tide line. Flat. The once. No more weight on it than that. And it has taken her the better part of 10 years to tell me how it started. Her name I'll keep to myself. She has it hard enough out there without me hanging it on the night air. What matters about her is this: she does not frighten. I've read her letters 6 years, and I have never once caught her hand shaking on the page. She went out to that lake on purpose, to be by herself, and she meant it. And what she finally sat down this spring to write me is the story of the winter she found out she never was. By herself. You'll know the lake, some of you, even if I don't name it. There's only the one out that way big enough to lose a person in. A deep, glacial lake, deeper than the charts agree on. I've held 2 charts of that water in my own 2 hands that can't both be true. And it doesn't sit beside the woods, it sits inside them. You drive in through the trees to reach it, miles of that. And then all at once the trees quit, and there's this great cold sheet of water where they stopped. Some are cabins along the near shore, most of them shut up now, sinking back into the alders, 20 years dark. And the one rule everybody who ever summered there could recite in their sleep: you don't swim past the buoys. You stay in where the bottom is still an idea you can hold. Out past them, the lake stops being a thing you can think about. The middle has never been properly mapped. The men who tried gave it back. Nobody calls that a haunted rule. It's just the rule. The way you'd tell a child not to lean out the window of a moving car. She grew up summering there. Her people had one of the cabins, back when the near shore still had families on it. And the families thinned out, the way they did everywhere up here, through the 70s into the 80s, till the cabins went dark one by one and stayed dark. Hers didn't. When the rest of her family was done with the place, she kept it, put in a stove and storm windows, made it a year-round house, and went out there to live alone, which, she'd want me to be plain about this, was the entire point. She'd had a marriage, a short one, and come out the far side of it clean. No children, no wreckage, just done. And what she wanted next was a lake, and quiet, and no footsteps on the boards but her own. She is not a sad woman. I need that clear, because the easy thing is to hear a woman alone at a lake and start feeling sorry for her, and she would have no use for that at all. She went out there and got exactly the life she went to get. Remember that. It matters later that she wasn't running from anything. She was running toward the quiet. She writes to me the way I'd guess she keeps her own log. Short, present tense mostly, like it's all still going on, which I suppose for her it is. The ice went out on the 14th. A loon is back on the cove. Cold nights yet. That kind of hand. She'll go a full page on water temperature and the birds, and never once tell you how she feels about a single thing. And then she'll set down something that stops your heart in the very same flat hand and go right back to the birds. Hold on to that flatness. It's going to do something to you later that I couldn't manage with every adjective I own. The story she finally told me starts the first autumn she stayed on past the season. Call it 10 years back. She'd summered there her whole life, but summering and wintering are two different countries, and she didn't know that yet. In summer, there's still a few souls out on that water, a boat, somebody's radio carrying across the cove of an evening. Then Labor Day comes, and they all close up and caravan out through the woods in one weekend, and the lake just empties. She wrote that the quiet that first September was the finest thing she had ever had in her life. Days of it. The water going still and black, the light getting thin and long, and not one human sound for miles in any direction. She thought she'd found the bottom of the very thing she'd come out there for. There was one other soul still on the lake that fall, an old man, last cabin up the point, one of the original families, older than the water had any business making a man. He'd wintered out there alone for years, and he would die out there in his own bed of being very old. He and she weren't friends exactly. Two people who've each chosen the same emptiness don't always have a great deal to say to one another. But he kept a neighborly eye, and now and again he'd say a thing. And she wrote down one thing he said that first fall because it struck her as odd, and she files odd things. They were down by her dock at dusk, and she started off toward the path along the water, the short way back to her place, and he said, not sharp, just flat, the way you'd mention a soft board in a step, I wouldn't take the shore path after dark. And she waited for the rest of it, the why, and there wasn't any rest of it. He looked at the water a moment, and he went up to his own cabin the long way round by the road. She thought, superstition, old man, been alone too long, and she took the shore path after dark anyway, that very night, because she was a grown woman, and it was her lake. And nothing happened. Nothing happened for a good while yet. You'll have noticed that's the way of these. The small things started so small, she had to invent reasons not to have noticed them. That's her phrase. I had to invent reasons. Her reflection some mornings, down off the dock in the flat water, ran a beat behind her. She'd raise a hand to shade her eyes, and the hand in the water came up a half-second late. Tired, she wrote. Bad sleep. The light on the water. And then it wasn't the timing. It was the particulars. She's looking down at the lake, and the woman looking back up at her is turned a few degrees wrong, looking past her, at the shore. Then one still evening, clear across the whole width of the lake, the old Renner place on the far shore had its windows lit. Warm, every one of them. And the Renners, she wrote, hadn't been up since the 60s, and the cabin hadn't a pane of glass left in it to hold a light. She could see it lit in the water, plain as a postcard. So she looked up, across the actual water, at the actual far shore. Dark, dead dark. A black band of trees, nothing in it. And she looked back down at the lake, and it was lit, every window. I am not sleeping well, she wrote that night. I'm going to start writing these down so I can see if there is a pattern. There was a pattern. She just had the wrong idea, still, about what kind. The old man up the point died that first winter. Nothing strange in the dying. He was 90-some, and the cold finally kept him to his bed, and then it kept him for good. She's the one who found him, when she hadn't seen his chimney smoking for 3 days and walked up, the road, not the shore, to look in on him. And she wrote that with no drama in it at all. except for the one line, which I've kept. She wrote, "I had thought I wanted to be the only person on this lake. I would like to amend that." That's the nearest she came that entire first year to telling me she was afraid. And she didn't even know yet what of. Because here's the turn in it. It was not the old man's dying that taught her anything. It was what came after. With him gone, she was the only living soul on that water, all the way to ice out. And that is when it stopped being shy with her. The reflections weren't just wrong anymore. They got busy. She'd be standing on the dock at dusk, and the water would show her standing there, and show someone at her shoulder, just behind her. She'd turn. Nobody. Turn back, look down. Two of them in the water again, her and the other, close as a pair of friends leaning on a rail. She learned not to turn around. She learned not to look too long. And she didn't decide to learn either one. She wrote that she noticed one evening that she had already quit taking the shore path after dark, months back, and couldn't have told you the day she stopped. Her body had filed the old man's one flat sentence somewhere. The rest of her couldn't argue with it. And then, this is the last of it before I let her tell you the worst part in her own words, she started seeing something out past the buoys, at what she calls the thin hour. That flat gray time before the sun is truly up, when the water and the sky go the same nothing color, and the line between them rubs out. Something out there on the surface, where the deep begins. Not a swimmer, not a loon, not a deadhead log come up, not anything she could make it be, and she tried. She is a woman who tries very hard to make a thing ordinary. Just she would not call it a creature. I want you to know she was careful about that 10 years ago, alone, in her own private notebook where no one was ever meant to read it. She wrote the word and then she crossed it out. She said a creature is a thing that lives, and this did not, and she would not lie to herself in her own hand. Shape was the word she let herself keep. A shape. Out past the buoys at the thin hour. Upright, where nothing upright has any business standing on deep water. Nearer, she thought, than the morning before. But she couldn't have proven nearer, so she wouldn't write it down. All she let herself put down was shape again, 5:10, same place or closer. I will not say closer without a way to measure it. I told you she'd tell you the worst of it herself. She will. I'm going to read you the page the way she wrote it, and then I'm going to stop reading, and you'll understand why. It was late that first winter, after the old man, before the ice closed the lake. A still dawn, the thin hour. And she'd long since stopped going down to the dock at that time of the morning. One more thing her body had quietly quit doing without telling her. But this dawn, she heard the boards. The dock boards. That particular knock a footstep makes on a frozen dock. You'd know it anywhere if you'd ever lived on one. Somebody was walking out her dock, in the gray, toward the open water. I'll read it. This is her hand now. Someone on the dock at 5 this morning. I watched from the window. It walked out to the end and stood. From the back, in that light, it was... And here she sets down his name, which I'll keep the way I keep the rest. His coat. His way of standing, the one shoulder dropped. I knew that it was not him. He has been 3 weeks dead, and I dug out the path to his door myself. I want to write that I was certain it was not him. I was not certain. That is the part I do not like. It stood at the end of the dock, the way he used to stand and look at the water. And then it looked at the water the way I have taught myself not to. And then it was not on the dock. I did not see it go. The boards did not knock, going back. She didn't write that it was a ghost. She never would. It isn't her shape of mind, and besides, it wasn't one. She wrote it was not him, and she was right. But I've spent 30-odd years collecting what this country does, and I'll tell you the shape of the thing she'd brushed up against, as near as the old people ever let it be put. That water keeps what goes into it. It's the oldest thing said about that lake, older than the rule about the buoys. The buoys are only that same rule, worn down, with the Y filed off it. It keeps its dead. Not the bodies, the likeness. The reflection of a thing outlasts the thing out there. The far side of that water has a whole shore on it, lit cabins and all, and it is not empty, and what walks it wears what the lake has kept. The old man never drowned, doesn't matter to the lake. He lived 90 years on that shore with the water looking at him every single day, and the water had him by heart. So when he was gone from his side of it, he was not gone from the other. She went out there to be alone. And the thing she actually walked into is that there is no alone on that shore. There is only the company you can see and the company you can't, and the thin hour when the second kind comes up the dock to stand where the first kind used to stand. I read that page. The dock, the dropped shoulder. It was not him, and I was not certain, and I had to get up and walk around this booth a while before I could go on. Because I know that exact uncertainty, the one that is not hope and is not grief, the one that stands at the end of a dock with its back to you, in a coat you'd know in the pitch dark, and will not turn around. And you cannot make yourself call out to it because you are afraid of both answers. He lets it go, doesn't finish it. Most of us out here past midnight know that uncertainty from somewhere. I'd wager it's half the reason you're still awake. That was 10 years ago. And I want you to have this part because I've just told you a frightening thing, and the easy assumption is that it ran her off that lake. It didn't. She is still out there. This morning, as I'm talking to you, still on that water, in that cabin, in her quiet. She kept it. She made her peace, of a kind, with the company. You learn the thin hour, and you stay up off the water while it lasts. You don't take the shore path after dark. You don't look too long, and you don't turn around. And you don't say what you saw. That last one's the real rule, the one underneath all the others. The thing out there does not like to be named. Naming it is how it learns you've seen it. 10 years she's kept all of that, the way the old man kept it, the way whoever taught the old man kept it before him. A chain of people on that one shore, minding the same handful of rules, not one of them ever said out loud. So why tell me now? Why write the beginning down this spring, after 6 years of sending me only the weather and the water and the birds? I asked her something close to that, and her answer is the reason I very nearly didn't read you any of this tonight. She wrote that the shape has been coming earlier, that the thin hour used to be a few minutes at dawn, and lately it's gone wide. That twice this spring she's seen it not out past the buoys, but in close, off the end of her own dock, in water she could stand up in. And that she has started to think, and you can hear her hating to write it, the flat hand bearing down harder on the words. She started to think it isn't the old man's likeness it's wearing anymore. And then she did a thing she has not done once in 6 years of letters. At the very bottom of the page, down under all those careful, flat sentences, she wrote a word. A name for it. The name, I think, the one the old man wouldn't say, and the one who taught him wouldn't say. The one that's been filed off the buoys and out of the rule and down to nothing across all these years. She found her own way to it, alone, out there. And she wrote it at the foot of the page where she knew I'd come to it. I'm not going to read it to you. I've sat with that page a week. I've about worn the fold of it through, reading down the column and stopping at the last line. And I won't say it on the air. And it isn't that I don't believe it. It's that I think she's right about it. And saying the thing is the one thing she and the old man and everybody back up that chain were so careful never to do. I've a small enough audience out here in the dark that I can afford to be careful too. I'd thank her not to write it again. And I'd ask you just the one thing before I let you go. If you're ever out on still water at the gray hour, and you happen to look down and find your own face looking at the shore while you're looking at the water, don't go reaching after the word for it. Some things you only keep safe by leaving them unsaid. That's the night. This is Field Notes, WGRY 91.3 out of Greyford. I'm Edward Hollis, and I'll be here till 4 the way I always am. Lights low, the door shut, the static for company. If you're out near the water tonight, you stay up on the shore. And wherever you are, stay in where it's warm. I'll talk to you tomorrow night. The river under it. Hold. Out.